Good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for being here together with me during this session called Programmers Are Way Cooler Than Musicians. It's going to be very different from the other sessions that you'll see here in the conference, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So my name is Geert Bevin. I work for an Estonian company called ZeroTurnaround, and kudos to them for letting me do this talk that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we're doing as a company. So this is just my own personal journey. I had the privilege to be able to work as a musician and as a programmer for a long time. I've been doing both for about 25 years. And about 4 years ago, I stepped away from the Java landscape and I went to work for a company in the UK that's called Eigenharp. And I worked on an amazing new electronic instrument. And that also got me to reflect on a few things and to discover a whole bunch of other technologies. So this talk is mainly going to be about 3 things that came out of that journey for me, 3 technologies, and each time it's going to end up into how a technology has had a profound humane impact on people. So that's kind of the recurring theme throughout this entire talk. Well, to start this off, I know that a few people are here and they're eager to see and hear the Eigenharp, so I'm going to play a little bit of music for you. So this is the instrument that I was privileged to work on the software side for a number of years. So the hardware has been under development for a long time. They worked on it for 10 years before they actually came out with it, and then I joined the team. So there you go. So this is a piece that I actually wrote specifically for this song, for this talk. It is quite new for me, so I hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you. So this is all quite a challenging setup. You'll see me fiddling around with a lot of stuff here just to be able to demo the most things to you in a very short session, actually, for what I'm going to talk about. There you go. So this is off, I guess. It's stuck here. Okay. So that kind of gave a little overview of what the Eigenharp can do. But let's now get into the topic of the talk. So musicians are extremely creative people, like every artist, and I love musicians. The thing, though, is that in the Middle Ages, musicians and narrators had a very privileged role in society. The boundaries were closed. People had a lot of trouble to travel to other villages, other cities, other countries. So the only people that were actually relating what was going on elsewhere were the musicians. So they were actually responsible for your reputation. They could totally build or break someone. They were actually the gatekeepers to who you are and who you were, and the way you were seen outside of your native village. But then, of course, we started to travel, and airplanes came along, and the internet arrived, and now we're all responsible of our own image. We're all who we are, and we can craft that. We can do with it what we want. We don't need these musicians anymore. So they kind of stepped down in society and went back to the artist status, which is already awesome. And I think that actually now we programmers, we're starting to have a similar gatekeeper kind of role. We're able to control everything. Everyone uses daily, all the time, equipment that is brought to life by us. We do that. And we have the capability to think and to come up with great ideas that will change the world, that can make life of people actually much better. So we can create new realities. We can change the name of the game. So this is the first thing that I would like to talk about, which is Second Life. And I know that probably no one here is on Second Life. If there is someone, please raise your hand. Okay, that's what I thought. I was exactly the same, actually. I've always seen Second Life as this weird thing that people do. It's not even a game. It's just a virtual world where people hang out. Strange. Why would you do that? Why would you try to mimic things that you actually already do in your first life? You just stand there and you chat. You can chat on the chat room, and you change your virtual clothes. And why would you do that? And so what happened was I was at a music trade fair a couple of years ago, and I met a musician that's called Jordan Rain. And she's an independent musician from New Zealand. And she told me that she was actually making her living from playing music on Second Life. I was like, wait a minute, how does that work? How can you make a living by playing virtually in a virtual world? So it turns out that actually there's an extremely active scene over there that allows you to play on a virtual stage with a virtual set of avatars that are like the audience that is attending, but real people are sitting behind those avatars. And you as a musician get a direct connection with actually your real audience. People don't have to travel anymore to listen to the music that they like. They can actually be part of an audience that is interacting together, because that is usually what a show is. It's the relationship that you build as a musician with your audience at that time. And so I tried that out. This is me playing a gig in Second Life, so I had help from a few people to dress me, because surprisingly it's not that easy. You actually have to know quite a bit about 3D modeling and programming, and things have to flap in the wind when you walk around and stuff like that, so it's not that easy. And we didn't get around to create the Eigenharp, but we did find a guitar that was strikingly similar to my guitar. So half of the shows that I play is guitar anyway, so that kind of worked out. And then Jordan Rain, so that musician, she brought me in contact with other people actually in Second Life. And there is this, so you you've got a virtual world for people that have never been in Second Life, and you've got these plots of land that kind of float in nothingness, a little bit like a never-ending story at the end, right? It's all dark, and you just have these plots of land that are flying around. And these plots of land can be as big or as small as you want. And this is one of these plots of land, and it's called Eigenharp, and it's a community of artists, basically. A lot of volunteers help people out to actually get started with this new medium, with Second Life. How do you handle audience? How do you create your fan base? How do you provide an interesting visual appearance? And you know, all these kind of things. And also, and this was actually what really blew my mind, I had to see this. So they have a virtual dance show. What? I can understand that a musician sits in a studio and he plays music and then it's streamed to the audience and they enjoy it in real time. But virtual dancers, what's the point in that? So actually, they have this dance show that is going on every week with 20 people, about 20 people that do a rotation. And they've got a show of an hour where they prepare dances that they do in real time with virtual characters, with avatars. And so they build their whole avatars. And so they build their whole stage. And so this is an example. So this is it's called Guerrilla Burlesque, so it's a burlesque show every time. And what they did here, this person, she actually crafted the whole stage. Everything is done by her. She picked the song that was going to be played. She picked how she was going to be dressed and how all her movements were. And she's doing those in real time while an audience is sitting and watching that. It's amazing. And so something that I found even more amazing, because this is quite a technical feat. They have to animate all these characters and they have to actually program them. Most of people are doing that were female. I was quite surprised by that, because usually we think that women are not that active with technology, but they really were expressing themselves there, which is something I found really nice to watch and to be part of. Well, that's cool. But what about bringing both together? What about bringing live music and dancing together? That would be awesome. So there is this festival in the United States. It's called the Burning Man Festival. Has anyone ever heard of this festival? Yeah? Oh, wow, awesome. Last time I asked that, no one knew about it, or they were just too shy to say. So very shortly, for people that are going to watch this on video, Burning Man says on their website that you have to experience it to know what it is. That's a little bit vague, but the thing that I kind of take away from it, from the images that I've seen and the videos that I've seen, is that it's about giving. It's a festival where people come to the desert and they do their thing. They share it with others and they create a unique moment in time, an isolated moment in time that starts when they arrive, and when they leave, it has to be clean. Nothing can be remaining on the floors or on the sand. It has to be as if nothing happened. So this is like this apostrophe in time, some unique experience that will only stay a memory, but that will be very profound, probably. So obviously, Burning Man has a lot of spin-offs that don't happen in that particular desert, and many countries have their own Burning Man. And of course, Second Life has its Burning Man. So this is Burning Man from 2 years ago. So this is the main stage where concerts were happening, and you can see some installations out around it, but this goes on like very far. The people building for months to actually create their installations that will only be there for a week. The Burning Man Festival on Second Life is a week. So this is the stage, and so we participated in that. And you can see here, this is our band doing a sound check on stage, so you can already see our avatars standing there when we had helped to craft the stage. And then these are the dancers that are going to dance on our stuff, and you can see us being modeled there in the background, and this is what it looked like. So this is us in Belgium, standing in our attic. So my girlfriend is singing. This was our band. We kind of split since then, but so at that time we had a band together, and so you've got two webcams, one on us and one on the drummer, and we're playing live. And at the same time, you've got other people that are actually animating the avatars in real time on the music that we are playing in real time in Belgium. And these people are from all over the world. Most of them have never even seen each other. And so we created this whole show of an hour with about 20 people. You've got someone here that is doing the cameraman, he's filming that. People were responsible for animating our avatars because we couldn't do it. We had to play music. Then, of course, you had the dancers, and you had people building the stage and the tree over there. You can't see it because the excerpt is too short, but actually grew older through the concert. So as the concert continued, the tree started losing its leaves and it started to change and stuff like that. So this was really a very, very nice experience. It is something that I will never forget. And I still, each time that I see Cherry Blonde and all the others from the team appear online, I'm like, you've got this extremely emotional reaction. This was something real. We lived this, and we're still talking about it. And just to show you until where this goes, this virtual and real, this connection between the virtual and the real world. So at one point, Jordan Rain, that musician that introduced me to Second Life, she got in a very bad stage in her life. So she basically lost everything and had no way to actually get out of the ditch. Since she had her audience on Second Life that had actually been supporting her for so long, and since she had been so supportive towards so many other musicians, we organized a festival. We organized a 2-day festival with 20 musicians that played for free just to raise money for Jordan. And I was quite skeptical about that also. It's like, okay, how much money are we going to raise? Well, it turned out that we actually raised several thousands of euros just to be able to get her out of the ditch, people doing donations while this festival was going on. So that to me shows how deep of a connection that you can have even when everything is virtual, but you still have real people actually interacting with each other. So that's the chapter about Second Life. And I'm still constantly in contact with all these people. It's like this whole Second Life for me. So let's now talk about second topic is the Eigenharp. So this is kind of the tagline, right? This is how the instrument is sold. They say that it's the most expressive electronic instrument ever made. That's kind of a bold statement, right? Because I think you probably piss off most people immediately, because electronic musicians are already playing instruments, and they, I think, probably instantly say, well, hey, I'm expressive with my stuff, so why would you be more expressive with your stuff? But I think that the accent there is actually on the technical part. So what allows you to be expressive as a musician? It comes down to one basic thing. It comes down to creating a feedback loop. So you have something that you're manipulating, and you get constant confirmation that the slightest little thing that you do has got an influence on the sound that you hear, right? The more that you chip away from that, so the less direct interaction you have, the less you feel inspired and the less expressive you are. So why is the Eigenharp one of the most expressive electronic instruments ever made? It's because technically it actually reaches a level where it can sense every small detail. So how does it do that? It's got, I'm going to show you that in a minute in detail, but it's got keys that are extremely sensitive, that send everything over a wire straight to the computer without actually decimating. It sends it all in bulk, and the amount of information that is sent to the computer is gigantic. It is like right beneath the threshold of overloading the USB 2 bus. If you put something else on the same bus, then that's usually creating problems. It's almost like a whole symphony of audio coming out, but then it's only performance data. It's not even translated into music yet. And then when that appears on the computer, you've got all these detailed streams that are coming in, and you can use that to actually create very detailed sounds. So let me show you what I mean with the Eigenharp's keys being very sensitive. So you can see that it's got 120 keys here, 12 keys there. and they're all the same. They're all actually moving in 3 dimensions. So I've got a sound here that doesn't really show everything, but it shows one aspect of it, which is when I press down, I can pitch bend this note individually. And I can do it individually for each key. So that already gives you something that, if you're a keyboard player, something you don't have, which is what guitar players always do. They have this vibrato underneath their finger. Well, in this case, you have it underneath your finger. And what the other aspects of the Eigenharp keys is that you can press down continuously, and you can press left and right continuously also. So you've got 3 axes, right? So, because this is a technical conference, I thought I'd throw in a little bit of technical stuff also. So, so for those that are curious about how these things are made, so this is a cross-section of the key. You can see the orange stuff, which is the actual body of the key, which can be either in plastic or in wood. And then you've got the gray part that is a seal that prevents moisture from coming in or light from coming out. And then at the bottom, you've got this green-blue prism with purple LEDs at the bottom. So what happens is, so this is a simplified version of this cross-section. So you can see that the LEDs at the bottom project lights that are being refracted by the prism, and then they all get back to the center. And then as the key is pressed down, you can see that these lights are being interrupted, and that can then be used to measure at what the inclination is of the key. Right? So if you incline it in one direction more, you'll have more light to one direction than to the other one. And this is the top view. So you can see that there are 4 light sensors, and it basically scans around and measures like that, right? And so what are the numbers? So given that you've got about 1 millimeter of travel in each direction, and you've got 11 bits of resolution, this gives you detection to 400 nanometers, which is about the size of a bacteria. So it's extremely precise, which is sometimes very difficult because you're not used to that as an electronic musician. If you breathe while you're playing, you're going to hear it. If you move around while you're playing, you're going to hear it. So this creates that feedback loop. Everything that you're doing is going to have an influence. It might be very small, but you will recognize it. And then, of course, you've got the sampling rate. That's very important also. You have to create a minimum amount of latency and jitter and stuff like that. And all this is then preserved from the Eigenharp to the computer so that you can make music with that, right? And let me show you what that can give you if you've got this data that's being preserved from the beginning to the end. So I'm going to sit down because that particular part is quite hard to do when you're standing up. So that's another aspect that I want you to notice now, is that based on what I want to do, I actually can change the interaction that I have with the Eigenharp, the physical body interaction that I have. This is important if you want to be expressive. So since these things are so sensitive, you can actually start modeling instruments that would otherwise be very difficult if you would just have keys that you press down. So this. What I have here on the sides of the Eigenharp, I haven't talked about it yet, are strips, touch strips that measure when I slide over them. And so I can... And you can play really... Not such a good job. And you can see that this is actually difficult to play. It is hard because you have all these details that are being picked up, so you've got to be careful. And I don't have time to actually practice this particular part of it well. Just have to make choices, right? But if that's your thing, you can play like this. So here's another example. So I just told you these keys are extremely sensitive. I've got access to all that information, right? And I told you that each key moves in 3 dimensions, left, right, up, down, in and out. So what we usually think of when you press a key is I press down and I'm starting to wiggle it. Okay, this is your instinctive interaction model with a key. But since it is so sensitive, I could actually say, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to model the strings of a guitar. I'm going to create a virtual guitar pick that will activate the strings when I hit it left and right instead of down, right? So I've got these 6 keys at the bottom here that are set up as 6 virtual guitar strings with the frets, again, on the left side here. And you will know, any guitarist in the room will see that I'm playing familiar guitar shapes. And I can just activate the strings. So your imagination is, again, the limit, right? You get all this data. If this would have been truncated coming out of the instrument, it would have been finished. Someone that decided beforehand what the interaction model had to be would have limited the functionality. So let me give you one final example. So this is even another approach. So instead of taking each key as an individual note, I wanted to create a percussion instrument. So I'm going to be very fortunate to have a Zen tambour drum very soon because I love the physical aspect of it. But this is using samples from a hang drum. Any musician here probably has already heard of it. The hang drum is a round metal percussion instrument that makes very beautiful meditation sounds, actually, and it's made for that. It's made to relax and to calm and to bring yourself to an elevated form of consciousness, I guess. So what I did here is, instead of having each key being a note, I just created regions. So this is all a region with a particular tone. And this is another one. And the thing you can hear also that as I press harder, I'm starting to add more information to that, and it's becoming natural, a little bit out of tune and stuff like that. So. Thank you. So that's that, just to show you some examples of what you can do when you've got a lot of data coming in and trying to imagine what is going on. So to give you another image about what I'm talking about, this is a little bit like a retina screen for the input side. So we're all aware of what the high DPI and retina screens do for you. you don't see the pixels anymore. The pictures come to life, and you get a much closer connection to the image that you're seeing. Well, if you have such detailed measurements and such fast sampling rates on the input side, that's what it feels like when you're creating something and not just consuming something. So another thing that makes this possible, this expressiveness, and I think that this is actually probably the most important thing to think about as a programmer, is the blank canvas. So this is what the Eigenharp looks like if it's empty, if it's not doing anything, if I haven't programmed anything with it. It's just a bunch of keys laid out in a grid, right? And most musicians ask me then, yeah, but how is this laid out? Where is C, D, E, F? How do I play this thing? And the answer is, well, that's up to you. Of course, there's a bunch of people that have created setups that are already prepared to play piano and prepared to play clarinet and cello and stuff like that, but it's up to you. This is a big contrast with the piano. Just think about it. This is not a blank canvas. This is as rigid as it gets. You've got white keys and black keys, and the white keys are always C, D, E, F, G, and you go on, right, until the next C, and then the black keys are the accidentals in between. So that's all they're ever going to be, right? Physically, that is set in stone. It's been studied for the very good reason. It's because physically you have to have these hammers on the piano that strike down. You've got the strings behind it, and that's why you put them in this arrangement so that you can build a physical piano. But then this turned out to be the interface for all electronic instruments, which is strange because there is no physical aspect to it anymore. And still, you're tied to this very rigid canvas. Yes, of course, everyone is gonna, that sees a synthesizer says, yeah, I can play the bass on this, so I'm just doing this. That's not a bass. It doesn't feel like a bass. It might sound a little bit like a bass, but it doesn't feel like it. You will not be able to slide, and you will not be able to create vibrato, or what are you going to do when you want to play percussion on this? It doesn't work. You can try to make it work, but it will always feel weird. So this is another example. So this is a light switch, right? It's going to turn on the ceiling light. Everyone knows that. It's written on it, okay? What is this doing? I don't know. It could be anything. Yeah, it could send a spaceship into space. That's great. Actually, creating possibilities without restricting them, without going that final step, actually creates new realities, creates things that you can let your imagination loose on. Another example about this. Imagine that a software engineer would have designed the electric guitar. Okay? So what's the first thing you would do when you design an electric guitar? You write unit tests. Right? Of course. So you write your unit tests, you assert everything that you're supposed to do. So you've got the magnetic pickup that sends out a signal that comes to the amplifier, and then you're going to measure that the sound that is coming out is exactly what you want it to be, of course. So you build this whole series of unit tests to make sure that the guitar always sounds the same and that there is never anything that goes differently than you think is the correct way of sounding. Now, if we would have designed the electric guitar, the only thing we would have is jazz music. So there would not have been any distortion. No one would have created overdriven guitar sounds. You would not be able to go into the amplifier and take out a lamp. You would not be able to change the wires around, to put some other electronic components in between. You would not be able to switch the strings on your guitar or to change the tunings just to make it your own. No, because all the unit tests will fail. It doesn't work. So it is a difficult thing to actually put in practice. I'm aware of that. But I do think that is something we have to keep in the back of our minds. you can go too far. You can go so far as to reduce any kind of imagination, right? So, let me just continue on this streak of musical stuff. So what happened also is, during my time at Eigenlabs, is that the iPad became extremely popular as a musical device. So let me see if I can switch this around. You can see that screen. There you go. So this is an iPad that is running. So this is an iPad that is running a synthesizer that is made by Moog. So Moog is a kind of iconic synthesizer maker that has been building synthesizers since 1970. So they've always created analog synthesizers, nothing digital. And they brought out their first digital synthesizer actually on the iPad. And so what I have here is, oh, I've got to put on the sound, sorry, because there's a little bit of interference and I turned that off. Let me turn that on here, there you go. So, I'm just rubbing with my finger over the iPad screen, and you can see being highlighted where I'm rubbing it. And I can again express this independently. Each finger is playing a note independently, and I've got this expressiveness over it, right? Which is part of what multi-touch is about. You can do different things with different fingers, and it's detecting this independently. Now, technically, this is not that great because the sampling rate and whatnot is tied to the screen refresh rate. So to play it is not that nice. But what happened, though, is that when the synthesizer makers started building these software instruments on the iPad, they had to take multi-touch into account. So they created new synthesis engines, right? This hasn't happened before. Why? Because someone created MIDI. MIDI has been around since the 1980s and was awesome at the time. It was revolutionary. But it was built for 8-bit processors. And just to give you an example of what it was designed as, is they assumed that so you've got a bunch of devices, and each device is only be able to be actually expressive globally. So even if you play a chord, you're expressive globally for the whole chord. There are some exceptions to that, but it's always kind of clunky. And the resolution, of course, is horrible. Now, they created some workarounds, and it's all very kludgy. But the fact that MIDI existed, the fact that actually this protocol that was such a good thing in the beginning has stuck around, created an awful status quo. It meant that software synthesizer makers, or even regular synthesizer makers, would never do anything that MIDI wouldn't support. And MIDI wouldn't change because no synthesizers nor controllers or instruments would support anything else. So you get the status quo that has been there for 30 years, right? And we're still using technology, transport technology from 30 years ago in music, which is really strange if you see how fast we as programmers are used to kind of rethink everything, right? It's every 2 years, every 2 to 3 years. So this gives you per note synthesis. And if you translate that to the Eigenharp, I'm going to see if I can quickly switch to that, give you a short demo of that. I might want to put my harness on. So you heard me play this with my fingers, and it is kind of, I can't do much with this. But what happened is a whole bunch of things came into place. So you had these new synthesis models that were created thanks to something challenging the established data model, which is MIDI, right? So what then happened was these synthesis models were in place, but there was a problem with MIDI because MIDI, apart from the fact that it's really not created for being extremely expressive, it's extremely slow, okay? It's supposed to send out only 1 kilohertz of messages on total. That's it. It's not, each key here sends out 6 kilohertz, so imagine what it would be like if I play an entire piece, right? And so there's a company that then created a device, it's called iConnect MIDI, and they just said, okay, let's remove that limitation from the speed, and let's just go all the way over USB 2 and make it as fast as possible. And then I've got this whole thing set up here, which is basically everything in here has to be exactly that component. So even the camera connection kit. So this goes to the iPad. And if I take a Chinese version of the camera connection kit, this is not going to work. It's not going to hold up. The data rates are not going to be okay. It's going to have fluctuations. It just doesn't work. So everything actually magically fell into place for me to be able to do. And this goes to the iPad. And what I have is now a synthesized sound and not a virtual sound that is mimicking an existing instrument. And I can go even further. I can craft my own expressive instruments. So just to show you a little demo of that. So yes, if you followed along with that little schematic, it is horrible to set up, but it's getting better more and more. But yeah. The thing, though, is that this now, again, is going back the other way, because you've got these iPad instruments with all these capabilities, and then people that were challenging MIDI are now getting a lot more traction. So you've got a Belgian company, actually, that's called Copperland, and they make a new protocol that actually surpasses MIDI. It's got nothing to do with MIDI. It incorporates it, but it really allows you to leverage everything about electronic music on a network, connected, disconnected, USB, auto-discovery, auto-assignment, resolutions that are off the charts. So that's great. And then, let me go back because I'm not talking about it. So what then is interesting to me is you've got these instruments that give you that expressiveness. You've got the synths that are there. No one is using Copperland because it's too new, so you still have MIDI. But since the synths have been so popular, now Apple, in the latest version of Logic Pro, actually allows you to be as expressive because they reworked their internal synths. So you don't even need the iPad anymore. And even established synthesizer makers like Wolfgang Palm, they're now bringing out a standalone version of the software that runs on the iPad now runs on the computer again, so you don't even need the iPad anymore, and you can drive them directly with these new musical instruments. And that brings me to the final humane point about the Eigenharp. So this is the small version of the Eigenharp. It's called the Eigenharp Pico. It's extremely portable. It plugs in over USB, and what you have at the back here is a bunch of hooks that you can put your thumbs in, and you can play like that, right? And you can play like that, right? And this is a short video where you can see that someone actually created a special mount for the Eigenharp Pico. And what is the purpose of this mount? It is actually part of an initiative that is called OHMI, which is the One-Handed Musical Instrument Trust. So there is a problem for many musicians. There are a lot of musicians that actually have only one hand. It's either due to an accident, or it might be a birth defect, or anything, right? And currently, it's extremely hard, because most instruments are designed for both-handed playing. However, since the Eigenharp has been designed to be adaptable to almost anything, they're now part of this year's contest, and I think they made it through the final round, where they actually allow people to play the instrument with only one hand. And so you've got this mount that allows you to mount it, and since it's so expressive, and you can do anything with the notes, you can start creating layouts that combine notes together, and you can reach even 8 octaves of range in musical notes. So I thought that was actually something very interesting. And so you just saw me working with the Eigenharp, and I told you that I'd like you to notice how I'm interacting with it. I'm picking it up, I'm putting it down, I'm strapping it on, I'm putting it like this, I'm sitting down with it, I'm slanting it, I'm putting it towards me. All this is extremely important as a musician, right? But do we need this? Can't our bodies actually become the instrument due to new sensors, right? So can your body actually become the interface? And that brings me to this device over here. This is the Leap Motion Controller. I've got another one that's not hooked up. So that's piece of technology that I've been working with for the last few months. And so what it does is it measures the position of your hand in 3D space. Let me maybe show you what this looks like. So this is my hand with my fingers, and I can move it around, right? And I can have both hands, I can wiggle my fingers, and I can turn them, right? And I can have angles and do whatnot, everything, right? And the amazing thing is that it's extremely fast. It will detect everything that passes by, even with these horrible lights over there, because it's actually not designed to work that well with this kind of lighting situation. And so it goes into a mode that's called robust mode, which reduces the sampling rate. But it's still, as you can see, extremely fast. Right? So I started experimenting with that about ago, since Leap Motion actually, so these are the specs if you're interested in that. It's a little bit more coarse-grained than the Eigenharp, but it's 200 times more precise than Kinect 1. I don't know the numbers for Kinect 2. The sample rates are adaptive based on the situation and the lighting conditions. And the data rate, again, is preserved end-to-end. So this is the interesting part. They haven't decided upon what you're going to do with the information that it detects from your hands. They send all this in bulk to the computer, and their first version is actually creating the hand models, which is what it does now. But these are just cameras that are sending images, and they're doing digital processing upon that to determine all that information. And so, to me as a user, the latency is actually not noticeable, and it creates new rules, new interface rules. So what they did was they sent out about 10,000 developer units, free of charge, before the launch, and people started experimenting with that. And why? Because this is so new, they probably, and no one has actually even figured it out yet. How do you use this to the maximum? How do you get the best interaction model out of that? It's probably still 10 years away. And so by sending these developer devices out, everyone is actually figuring this out together. Where are we going with this? And so one of the things that I did, obviously, was I created a way of making music with this thing. Let me see how much time that I have left. I think I can show you a short demo of that. So this is all going extremely fast. I think that software was released about 3 months ago, with now about 3,000 users that are making music with it, and I'm getting new videos every week, so it's really very exciting. So you can see that I've got this. I can start being expressive just with my body. And it's very fast. I don't think about it. This is because usually when you see demos with gesture detection like that, people look at a screen and they show you something that is shown on a screen. But the screen refreshes at 60 frames per second, so which is very slow. So you always see this kind of latency, which is then recorded on a camera, which is then so. But this, for me, is. Right? And so 1 week after I sent out this piece of software, I get this video. This is a beatboxer that has been looking for ways to better express himself. So you can see that this is actually something extremely engaging. His hand movements actually correspond to exactly what is going on, and he's creating this relationship again with the audience, right? And I was amazed because I hadn't even thought of something like this. All I did was pull a set of rules that could be used to be creative with. And I have a bunch of other examples, but kind of time is short here. Some composers are building film scores with it now because they don't have to draw them out manually. I didn't know that, but actually film composers, they play it in on a synthesizer and then they go sit in front of a computer for a week just drawing out automation curves to bring the scores in and out. What he's now doing is just doing it as a conductor. Right? He plays his stuff in and just everything comes in and feels great. And so another application then that I wrote for that, because obviously it's like, okay, if I can make music with it, I want to play games with it, because I'm a gamer, right? This must be awesome. Well, it works a lot of the times, but sometimes it's a bit difficult, but when it works, it's really great. So this is a bit difficult, but when it works, it's really great. So this is an example also of someone that sent this in to me. He's playing Skyrim. So he only uses his hands for playing Skyrim, and he has his right hand to look around, and then he brings in his left hand, and he can start moving, right? And then when he makes a particular gesture, he's going to bring out his spells. And this is the part that I like, because actually his hands are almost exactly the same as what you see on screen. And as he moves his hands, he's like casting out his spells. And this gives you such an immersive experience that it's, again, changing a lot of things. So you will see him bash someone's skull in. I just want to keep it going until that point. So there you go. Oh yeah. There you go. So, this is all a lot of fun, but then again, I started thinking about medical applications. Nothing that concrete yet. What I would like to do is build adaptive interfaces, because again, you've got all the information that you can work with and you can craft any reality that you want. But I got this video from someone. So he's using that application. And what he's doing, he's basically using his feet. This was not designed for being used with feet. This was designed for his hands. So he has no dexterity in his hands. He's been looking for a computer interface that he can use with his feet for a long time. And you can see that as he moves his feet, he's highlighting different parts, because he has only got a small video camera. But it basically allows him to operate his computer, because it set out a new set of rules that were flexible enough for people to be creative with that. So, I guess kind of the point of this talk is that so much is going on. And after me, you'll have a presentation about the Mayo, which is that device that you see at the top right, which actually measures muscle interaction. And I think it's got an accelerometer in it also. And I would really like to try it. I haven't even had the chance yet, so I hope maybe I might be able to try it out today. And this is going to be very interesting. What are we going to do with this? They're measuring muscle tension here, which actually happens before your fingers move. So it must almost seem magical, because it can get the impulse before your intended action takes place. And of course, you've got Kinect2, you've got Google Glass, you've got the Oculus Rift. A lot of people have talked to me about the Oculus Rift here, so there must be quite a bit of interest. I haven't had the chance to try it out yet. Then we have Raspberry Pi that actually allows you to easily just build a hardware project and throw it away if you want to. It's so cheap, and it's very powerful for what you get for the price. And you've got 3D scanners. That's something that really interests me a lot. Imagine if they become very fast and affordable. And then the white headband that you see at the bottom in the middle, that's called the Muse headband. It measures brain waves that are exposed over Bluetooth. So they're still in a startup phase, but I've seen quite some very interesting demos, and I've been talking with people in Estonia, the university, that are actually doing things with brain waves that are very interesting. Then, of course, you've got other musical instruments. To the right, you've got the C-board that has a similar approach as the Eigenharp. It tries to measure the interaction of your fingers, but it uses a flexible, foamy surface that actually gives you a little bit of resistance, but one of the things that allows you to do is to really slide all the way through and to get some other interaction models also. And then 3D printers. I think what we're going to do with 3D printers is amazing. I've heard actually of a company that is building giant 3D printers to do what? To build houses. Why not? So can you imagine they just drive up with their huge-ass 3D printer on your land and it lays out all the bricks, and there you go, your house is built. So the thing maybe to take away from this is to not be afraid to experiment. You never know what's going to happen. If you collaborate with other people and try new stuff out and just search for great inspirational devices and technologies, it's amazing, really amazing what happens in the end and how much of a humane experience it each time becomes. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to come up to me afterwards. Thank you.